Hello, I'm back to read chapter 14 of Sam Wu is Not Afraid of Spiders by Katie and Kevin Tsang. Now at the end of the last chapter, they'd found Tulip but were trapped in the supply closet. So chapter 14 is called Locked In. "We found Tulip!" Zoe shouted, as if it wasn't obvious. I didn't know what to do. We'd achieved our goal of finding Tulip, but now we were locked in a closet with a giant tarantula. I was feeling extremely unprepared, and to make matters worse, I could hear Bernard starting to panic breathe next to me. "Slow, deep breaths, Bernard," I said. He looked like he was almost about to cry. "But Sam," he said, "we're locked in." "With a giant spider," Zoe added. She started coughing. "I think I'm allergic to Tulip. I can't get any closer." I didn't want to get any nearer to Tulip, but I knew it had to be me. I was the one who needed to prove I wasn't a scaredy cat after all. I imagined what Spaceman Jack would do. He'd do what had to be done. I put on my beekeeper helmet and the gardening glove I'd taken off. Tulip raised her front legs and started hissing. I began to sweat. "Quick, Sam, before she disappears somewhere in here," Zoe said. She was standing on her toes on the footstool, as far away from Tulip as she could get. I was almost surprised she hadn't started climbing up the shelves lining the small supply closet. "But I don't know what to do," I wailed. "Well, what was your grand plan?" said Zoe. Bernard had stopped speaking and was just standing with his back to a shelf, mumbling to himself. "It definitely didn't involve being locked in a closet," I said. "Here," said Zoe, reaching up and grabbing a bucket from a shelf. "Use this." She tossed the bucket to me and I caught it. I held the bucket out towards Tulip, who was still hissing. She started to back away from me and I knew I had to be fast. I lunged forward and threw the bucket on top of her. Success! We'd trapped Tulip. Zoe cheered, and even Bernard managed a shaky thumbs up. But then the bucket began to move. "Ah!" yelled Zoe. "Ah!" I yelled. Bernard might have been yelling too, but no sound actually came out of his mouth, and his eyes looked like they were about to pop out of his head. "Quick," said Zoe, "you have to sit on the bucket to keep Tulip from getting away." The last thing I wanted to do was get any closer to the bucket, or Tulip, but I knew Zoe was right. I skirted round the bucket a bit, wiggling my bottom into the right position, and then sat down on top of it. I shivered as I heard Tulip scuttling around inside it, but at least the bucket wasn't moving anymore. "Now what?" said Zoe. "We're going to be trapped in here forever," Bernard wailed. "No, we aren't," I said. "Someone will come in eventually. You two, bang on the door and shout as loudly as you can." I looked at Bernard. "You have to do it, Bernard. It's the only way we'll get out." Zoe hopped off the footstool. "Come on, Bernard," she said, and then she started banging on the door with her fists and yelling as loudly as she could. Bernard began shouting too. And even though I couldn't help bang on the door, because I had to stay sitting on the bucket so Tulip didn't escape again, I yelled too. Zoe found another bucket and used that to hit the door, which was way louder than her fists had been. It was so loud inside the cupboard I could barely hear myself think. I just hoped that someone outside could hear us too. And then, just as I started to think that we were going to end up having a cupboard sleepover with a giant spider, the door began to open. Zoe and Bernard jumped back out of the way. A familiar face appeared. What is going on here? That is the end of the chapter. So we've only got one more chapter left before the end of the story, and I am excited to find out how it's going to end.